Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button, and if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. Billie Eilish, Happier Than Ever. Billie Eilish is an American singer, songwriter, pop superstar currently at the peak of her career and coming off the multi-Grammy winning debut album When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go?, which I also reviewed. If you're curious, there will be a link in the corner for you to go check that out. But now, 2 years later, we're back with a sophomore album and also a much shorter title, Happier Than Ever. One of the most anticipated albums of the year for me. I loved that debut record a lot, and a lot of the teaser singles to this album were also really good. It was clear that this was going to be a change in atmosphere and tone thanks to those singles. So let's just dive right in. What are my thoughts on Happier Than Ever? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We will start with the singles, with there being 5 of them. The first being My Future, which I did a track review on also, will be in the corner. And I'm going to keep this one brief because I already went into vivid detail on the track, and I don't really need to repeat myself since I think most of those points from that video still hold to me today. But I will answer the question of, did this track warm up on me? Kind of. Instrumentally, it's still very lukewarm for me. I'm not crazy about it, but the lyrical content makes a lot more sense in the context of the full record, with it being much more mature and less edgy, I guess. Decent track, definitely better in the album setting, but a pretty mid single all around. The second single, Therefore I Am, is a much more typical and appropriate single, especially when it comes to the sound of it, reminiscent of the more bopping moments on the debut album like Bad Guy or My Strange Addiction, with the pulsating bass and the recurrent rising of the synth. It has a hypnotic quality to it as Billie returns to her signature whispery, husky vocals, a perfect complement to the beat if you ask me. Lyrically, the track is a bit vague. The title plays on the famous Rene Descartes saying, I think, therefore I am, and while this track doesn't really have any philosophical message to it, the rest of the lyrics come off as very disregarding, unapologetic, and almost cynical towards media reports and web articles, yet her tone feels very casual and playful, even like she's just joking around about all these callous lyrics. I think it's a fun song. The third single, Your Power, switches up yet again, but this time in the complete opposite direction, with this airy acoustic guitar-driven ballad. And by driven, I mean pretty much single-handedly carried, as it's the only real instrument on this track. No percussion, no synth, no sample. The guitar is all you get, so the track is dependent on Billie's voice. Thankfully, she's always excelled at slower tracks in my opinion, and hits the home run here too. She keeps the reverb for the chorus, which has a very ethereal effect to it as she holds on to that breathy elegance for the verses, as these lyrics detail this abusive, tumultuous relationship and how this all affected her. She says the song isn't about anyone in particular, but mainly about wanting to inspire change regarding domestic abuse and people who take advantage of their significant other. Nice sentiment, well performed, amazing song. The fourth single, Lost Cause, is one of the most minimalistic bops I've heard in a long time. The drum has a good snap to it, the bass is a bit funky, kind of jazzy as well. The whole song is a mid-tempo jam with Billie's vocals front and center, losing that whispery characteristic and instead opting for a smoky, in-your-face performance. The song stays fairly flatlined throughout its runtime. There's a few minor breakdowns, but it never rises above an airy, kind of sultry vibe. Lyrically, it's a degrading message, but for an appropriate reason, as Billie is confronting this former love interest and just seeing right through them, and also just exposing them. This one took me a little bit of time to warm up on, but I'm glad I did. Great track. And the fifth and final single, NDA, which is an acronym for Non-Disclosure Agreement, and this one could have fit pretty snug in her debut album tracklist. It reintroduces the horror element with a slight industrial garnish. The verses feel extra manic, the pulsating bass, the plunky clinks of the synth, with Billie delivering a rap performance over this beat, which works a lot better than I could even explain. The chorus is where that industrial label comes from. Soaring distortions, rustling drums, and a robotic effect on Billie's voice make up for satisfying climaxes in the track. Lyrically, it seems to be about dealing with fame and wanting a private life, hence the title, to secure that privacy. It also has a pretty great transition into Therefore I Am, so that's bonus points right there. Great single. Let's see how the rest of the album compares. Now for the rest of the tracks. Opener Getting Older starts off with these steady, buzzing pulses of a synth, building this uncertainty in the instrumental as it progressively becomes slightly more fleshed out and complete with an extra synth until just about halfway when that deep, quiet bass drum melds the track into a brief yet compelling groove. Billie's got good vocal work here. Her minimal tone works well with this minimal instrumental. I will say though that this doesn't really feel like a full song. It kind of just comes off to me like an intro. Even at the 4 minutes that it is, the impact it leaves on the album is marginal, but it does coalesce some of the common themes of this record as Billie bares her soul, detailing these past traumatic experiences, dealing with stalkers, and this newfound sense of responsibility that age tends to dispense. It's a vulnerable song, and while it doesn't stand alone all that well, it's a great introductory piece to the record. I Didn't Change My Number is a much more upbeat track, and I really enjoyed this one. The stuttering synth work in the back, the simplistic yet effective percussion, and Billie's shifting vocals from that quiet caliber to a more sarcastic and silly at times provide a mellow yet still dense groove. I will say though, there are a few unique quirks to this song that prevent me from fully enjoying it. I don't think the snippets of Billie's dog snarling and barking add anything to the track. At most, it's like a jump scare at the beginning. I also think the rapid buzzing synths near the end of the track are kind of a hindrance. They're on a very clunky off rhythm and are also very loud in the mix, and so much so that it gets difficult to immerse myself in the beat going forward. Lyrically, it's about wanting to disconnect from this person, simplified in the first line where she says, "I didn't change my number, I only changed who I reply to." I like parts of this track, but as a full listen, I just don't think it's the most appealing. Billie Bossa Nova certainly lives up to that title, as this beat has quite a few Bossa Nova influences. The bass work, that drum pattern, light chimes, various clinking instrumentals to hone in on the tropical vibe this track brings. It's a very soothing and warm beat, and Billie plays with that by factoring in her quiet, sensual tone, giving the instrumental a new hedonic atmosphere that is very pleasant. And some of the lyrics only heighten that sensation, describing a sexual relationship. I can also see this one being a continuation of NDA's lyrics, where she insists on using aliases to check into hotels, likely being an attempt to keep this relationship private. This is an amazing song. Oxytocin is a bop, unquestionably. It's got a very similar instrumental and overall vibe to NDA, except cranked up to 11. It opens up with the acoustic taps before incorporating this high-tempo percussion, and those bass thumps pack so much weight to them. It's an instant jam. And I've always been a sucker for the vocal pattern of singing a line and then cutting it off for the next line and letting the beat run. And with this track, it works so well. I also feel like I need to highlight this pre-chorus, which adds in the staccato beeping synths, and that chorus with Billie's extremely breathy vocals over this pulsing bass melody before she just soars at the end. Such a satisfying build-up. Lyrically, I kind of get the sense that it's about clinging to someone less than desirable strictly for the spike in oxytocin, which is a hormone that affects attachment and lust. Not necessarily treating them well, but also not wanting them to run away. Lyrics aside, the track slaps. GOLDWING opens up with this heavenly a cappella section that really reminds me of like a church choir. It is such a beautiful performance and a far cry from the bedroom pop aesthetic she's been known for. After that opening, we get some minor rap skaters and a thunderous bass drum as that a cappella section pokes in and out of the mix to create this humming melody. Would have loved to hear this track expanded a bit more, only 2.5 minute runtime, and it really shows itself as the track is over and done before you know it. But I'm just glad it exists in the first place. Lyrically, it's about this young, pure woman who has never experienced any traumatic events, with Billie playing the role of this acquaintance, enlightening this woman of the corruption of the music industry. Love this song. Hallies Comment is a traditional Billie ballad, and I really think it's another one that's well done. Not much that's here instrumentally. There's a murky piano, the hollow thumps of the percussion, and the brief electric guitar, as Billie sticks to the same soft delivery. The outro is really nice though. The piano picks up a little bit as Billie's vocals undergo this bubbly submerged effect. It's a nice switch up. Lyrically, it's a cute little love song playing with the term Hallies Comment, like how that event is considered very few and far between, and getting her to come around is even rarer, but this romantic partner manages to make that miracle happen. It's a nice track, but honestly in the full album context, it does little to stand out. Not My Responsibility is a 3-minute and 47-second spoken word monologue over a wavering synth, with Billie addressing the objectification of women by media and the public, but especially towards herself, as she was still classified as a minor when she really became a superstar and always was seen hiding her body behind baggy clothing. But now, shifting into adulthood, she's ready to open that can of worms and take control of her body again, as I'm sure most people saw when she was clad in lingerie in that Vogue cover in May of this year. I'm really glad she's speaking up about it and addressing all the critics, plus in the album sense, it's got a pretty flawless transition into the next track, which is always nice. Overheated is a pretty good song. The instrumental is subdued yet sporadic at the same time. The ticking of the hi-hats just kind of runs all over the place, along with the gallops of the bass and a weary synthetic ambience in the background. Billie's vocals hold the same caliber as usual, although I love that effect she does with the harmonizing with a very deeply pitched voice, and that's used on the chorus. Plus, the brief rap performance as well was quite the surprise. Lyrically, it's a continuation of Not My Responsibility, tackling female objectification, but also being overheated with how high people tend to hold celebrities. Again, it's a good song, I quite like it, but it's not really a standout. Everybody Dies is a gentle, sweeping ballad, and I really adore this one. Very ambient instrumental here. No percussion, no overtly distorted bass, just some sputtering ambience fluctuating in intensity, leaving plenty of room for Billie to shine vocally, and does she ever shine. Her quivering lows and her glorious highs both get time in the spotlight. There's no hook or anything on the track, it's really just 4 verses, but with the content and execution here, I don't think a hook would have been appropriate, as this track is pretty much Billie's deepest and innermost thoughts translated into song, discussing mortality, honesty, and looking towards the future, with Billie confessing to the listener that she has these dark moments, but still manages to comfort the listener in that it's okay to feel these feelings, you're not alone. Death may be a sensitive subject, and while it may seem callous, everybody dies, and that's just kind of something we have to come to terms with. Love the song. Happier Than Ever, which is really becoming a big post-release hit, and for a good reason. Even at the nearly 5-minute runtime, this one does not hold anything back. It starts tame enough with a gentle ukulele melody and Billie's smoky tone returning. It almost comes off like some sort of lullaby until about halfway, when that ukulele morphs into an electric guitar and Billie's voice gaining a robotic effect, and then suddenly it just bursts into this heavy, dense beat with overblown percussion. It's truly an explosive climax. Lyrically, it seems to be about this relationship that just fell apart and how this person completely just tore her up. Great song. And finally, the closer, Male Fantasy, is a melancholic ballad to finish the album, and I'd say it ends pretty strong. The light plucks and the hollow taps of the acoustic guitar paired with Billie's pillowy tone, it's got a very dreary yet entrancing vibe to it. It doesn't build up much higher than that, aside from some foggy hums and harmonies, along with a minor rise in Billie's vocals, as she sings about how the media and entertainment often please the male fantasy, which leaves women to just kind of become objects in this culture, tying this back to a relationship, and also not being satisfied with her past self anymore. It feels like a fitting curtain call to the album, and it just so happens to be a good song as well. Overall, I will admit that I had a fair share of skepticism going into the record. The sophomore slump is constantly itching in the back of my mind, but I think it's safe to say she avoided it with flying colors. A lot of topical and vulnerable lyrics, solid grooves, and gorgeous vocals to back them up, and a fair share of tried and true bangers to liven the album up. This is a fantastic album. I just only hope this is the beginning of this transformation, and I eagerly await whatever may be coming next. I'm feeling a very strong 8 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.